Today, we are going to start by talking about the countries of West Africa. And before we get into each individual country, which we'll do very quickly, I want to first talk about the fact that there is a crisis, pretty epic proportions going on in West Africa. And there's a couple of different things that are causing this crisis. Number one, the biggest problem is a lack of water. They of course, we've talked in the last week. We talked about how important it is to have water, and they're experiencing a great drought in West Africa, and without the favor of rain, they're really struggling there. And the second thing that's going on is political unrest in the Sahel region, and we'll talk about that region in a moment. Well, I guess that'll be on Wednesday that we'll talk about that. But the Sahel region is going through a lot of political unrest, and a lot of people and different religious groups are trying to take over there. There's a lot of threat of lack of safety. And so this area of the world is in a lot of danger at this point. And if you're interested in more of that, you could go to YouTube. You could go to any of the news agencies and just Google West Africa, for that matter, and check out, see what's going on there. But first of all, but now let's just go ahead and talk very quickly about the different countries of West Africa. First is Nigeria, and I'll give you one or two facts about each of these countries so we can move on rather quickly today, okay? Nigeria has a ton of ethnic groups. Oil is the country's major export, and most Nigerians are poor because there's a lot of people being born. They don't have a ton of food, and the government itself is poor. Senegal and Gambia, Senegal wraps around Gambia and is larger and richer. They're known for their peanut farming, and tourism are major economic activities, and many people speak the language called Wolof in Senegal and Gambia. Let's look at Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde all at the same time. These are all three small and poor countries. Guinea, coincidentally, has a lot of bauxite resources there. And most of you know the town of Bauxite is named because of the bauxite resources that were mined there in the early portions of the 20th century. And so, wish we had more time for stories. My family actually is here because of the mining of bauxite. And so Guinea-Bissau has many undeveloped resources because of their poverty, and Cape Verde is a chain of islands. They've got a democratic government, but their main resources there are tourism, and if you can imagine why, because of the island countries, they have a lot of people wanting to come and visit there, and the coastal environment that even a lot of Arkansans want to go and visit, right? Liberia and Sierra Leone. Liberia is Africa's oldest republic, and the United States has a presidential republic, which means that we're represented as we vote for the president. And it was founded by Americans. Liberia was in the 1820s as a home for people who were freed from slavery. Sierra Leone has experienced a ton of violent civil war. That was early 90s to early 2000s. They were experiencing a real bad civil war, killed thousands of people, left millions of people homeless. And so both of these countries right now are trying to rebuild based on things that have been going on, such as that. Ghana and the Ivory Coast, excuse me, Ghana and the Ivory Coast, they have a lot of natural resources. Ghana has gold, timber, and cacao. Just last night I was able to eat some cookies made from cocoa, which is made from cacao. The Ivory Coast also produces cacao, and they also have coffee. Togo and Benin, very unstable governments in both of these countries. They're both very poor, and they mostly farm and herd. And again, both of those industries are going to be greatly devastated when there is a drought in the land. and they are experiencing that right now. Now, there was a time in West Africa when there was a locust problem, and I know some of you, if you watch CNN 10, you've seen that there's a locust problem in Africa even today. That's more in East Africa, though. West Africa had their problems with locusts 7 to 10 years ago. Let's move on with our other countries. There is Mauritania. Let's just start with Mauritania. This country used to be nomadic herders. We're talking about Mauritania now, but most of the countries now have moved to the cities. They're still mostly poor, and only in the far south are they going to be able to do farming, even when there's not drought conditions. And as in many of these smaller African countries, they've got a lot of corruption and ethnic tensions as they try to move forward. Niger, there's very little good farmland there. When they are able to grow things, they grow grains, and this is a place that in the 2000s the locusts were the worst, and it caused a great famine and a great shortage of food, and increased the poverty that was happening there in Niger. Chad. They have better farmland than other Sahel countries, and the Sahel we'll talk more about when we get to the geography portion of this. In the past, Lake Chad had a lot of good fishing, but since that time, because of drought, Lake Chad has mainly dried up. And they had a civil war, and they discovered oil at the end of that, and so they're hoping that there's a better future for Chad than there used to be. Mali, there's about 40% of the land in Mali that is desert land. This is one of the poorest countries in the world. Now, we're not just talking about in Africa, but in the world, especially, like we've talked about, that drought being such an underlying issue going on there. Cotton and gold are their main exports. Tourists visit some of the ancient cities, and one of those is called Timbuktu. I want you to check that out on I think you may have heard that word before and maybe not known that it was a true place. Timbuktu. Check it out on Google. Timbuktu. Burkina Faso. It's again, and this is not going to surprise you guys. It is also a poor country. The soil is very thin. There's very few mineral resources. There's not a lot of jobs there. In fact, there are so few jobs there that many people here in Burkina Faso end up going to other countries to find their jobs. So, when other countries end up having problems, the people from this country also have a lot of problems with being able to stay employed. And so, with that said, let's go ahead and end today. As we have been talking each day, I want you to consider sending in something good. An email, add to that document that some of your teachers have, but tell us something good. We do not want to just be teachers to you that give you information. We also want to know what's going on in your life, and that's not just something we do while we're here. We always want to know what's good for you. So go ahead and share that with us today, and we'll be happy to hear it. Hope you guys have a great day.